Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are looking at a server update which has pretty much added the battle rating changes which we discussed last week into the live server. This means that all of the changes that were listed on this list right here, that you can see the planned battle changes of November 2018, are now implemented in the game. Now in this video what we're going to do is go over some of the last battle changes which have been added, since the video that I made before doesn't include the ones marked with X here, which were done as a latest update, which was done about 5 or 6 hours ago, I believe, so obviously we didn't cover them. And once again, I'm going to concentrate on the RB changes. Matrix 232 has actually done a really good series, if I can just find it here. He did a really good series looking at all of the different AB changes, and I would recommend going to his channel if you're interested in either doing a TEC Hub Talks with him, which is where he interviews members of the Discord, or he also goes over the weekly decals, as you can see here, and gives you all of the tips and tricks to do them, and also he goes over the planned BR changes for Arcade. I think it's a great place to go if you're interested in Arcade, and since I personally am a realistic player, I focus on the realistic stuff. So make sure you check out his channel if you want to get, his opinion on how to do all of those things. So let's go into the latest update changes to realistic battles. Now, the two ground forces changes, which I mentioned the other day, it was the M48A2 and also the German Sherman, the M4748A. Now, with the M48A2, when it was changed to 7.7, I think I'm actually going to revise my opinion on this. So when I made the video before, I very much compared the M48A2 to the M48 that we find in game. And the M48 is struggling, I would say. And mainly it struggles because of the fact that it gets APCR as a stock round, as you can see. Ooh, lovely. Because of the research changes, I actually get parts on the thing. But yeah, because of the APCR round, that's obviously a bit of a struggle. But once you get heat, it's not too bad, but it's nowhere near as good as the M48 or the M60 at the same BR. Now, the Magak is also at 7.7, so bringing down the German M48, I think actually makes sense to keep it in line with the Magak and the M60, and I would actually advocate for the American M48 to go down to 7.3. So I think I'm going to revise my opinion on that. I think before I focused way too much between the two vehicles there instead of expanding it to others. So yeah, I think the M48A2 going down to 7.7 is good, but I would also advocate for the American M48 to go down to 7.3. Or to at least change its stock shell so it's useful. Anyway, in the latest update, we had a bunch of airplane changes. So let's go through them. The first one is the XF5F. It's going down from 3.3 to 3.0. If you don't know what this is, it is a gift vehicle, if I can just find it, which I believe was given out at the same time as the KV220. It was one of the first actual... what would you call it? It was one of the... I just need to check something. Yeah, it's all good. It was one of the first vehicles that I personally... got as a gift vehicle, and it's the XF5F Skyrocket. It has an insane climb rate, it has insane maneuverability, but what it does not have is very good dive and absolutely abhorrent armament. Two 12.7s with only 400 rounds and two 7.62s is not something that you look at and go, hell yeah, that's really good. So what has always limited the XF5F is, even though it can get in a really good position to be aggressive against other players, and it also has the maneuverability so it can keep the advantage, the one thing is the fact that it can't seal the deal, because enemies can just dive away from it and it can't follow, and on top of this, it is very hard to kill stuff with the armament that it finds itself in. So lowering its BR, I think, is completely fine. Now you have to pay 200G for this. I believe this one used to actually be free. Otherwise, how would I have it? but I'm guessing now you just have to pay G. That's fine though. I don't really care about that. They're both really nice skins, and as a gift vehicle, you know, it's okay. Maybe you have to unlock it. Yeah, they must have put in a requirement for it. But overall, dropping its BR, I agree with. At 3.3, it starts to come up against the German behemoths, which are really good at high altitudes once they're diving down. Basically, really good at turning and energy fighting at the same time. The Skyrocket is really good in a one-on-one engagement, but it just cannot seal the deal. Like, it is not a plane that is going to be able to do that. So dropping its BR makes sense to me. The next one is the C205, Series 3. Now, the C205 is actually going up in BR. If you want to know what this is, it's in the Italian tree, and it's in this folder here. 4.0 for this machine, so it brings it in line with the G.91 Soto Series 0. The main thing that you're getting from the Series 3 is that it has more 20mm than the Soto 0, and you're getting a very, very similar amount of performance out of it. I personally think that the Series 3 is a really good aircraft. One of the nicest grinds for me personally through any tree in War Thunder was the Italian air tree. All of the aircraft are very similar to each other. They all feel really nice to play. They're all a good mix between, climbing performance, energy performance, and also maneuverability. I never really felt like there was an Italian plane where I couldn't outclass an opponent or be able to outfly them, and the C205, joins that. So seeing it go up in BR is kind of not really a surprise. What is a surprise is that the G55 is now the same BR, or the C205 Series 1 is now there's a 1.0 gap between them. Like, if we look at this, the 202EC and the 205, I mean, all of these aircraft are kind of interchangeable in a way, so seeing them with different BRs is interesting. But I think, it makes sense. They're all really good aircraft, so it's all going to be stats-based when it comes to that. The J2M2, Lord have mercy, it's going up. I talked about the J2M2 in my last video, and it's now gone up. I'm very sad, because if you didn't watch the last video, my stats in the J2M2 are disgusting. 35 and 6, and then the Key 61, 29 and 7, 20 and 3, and the Key 45 Go. But the J2M2 is my, I'm really, tired, or I've had a bad day. Let's go into this and just annihilate some people. So to see my death machine get up BR'd is very sad. Does this mean it's unplayable? No, it is still really good. It'll go against a lot more stuff like Mustangs, P-47s, and it can still fight on their level. If anything, it has a little bit more maneuverability, very good high altitude and high speed performance. Maybe not compared to the Americans, but most of the time you're fighting around mid altitude, so it's okay. The turn rate is surprisingly good, and overall it's a great energy fighter. So in those mid speeds, which is where most of your engagements are going to happen, you have great maneuverability. You can chuck this thing around, and you do have the guns to seal the deal. Even though they might be slightly low velocity to what you're used to, if you're not used to Japanese guns, it's an absolute stone cold killer. Beautiful machine. Very sad to see it go up, but I do understand why. So, yeah, let's move on. The interesting changes is the BF-109 F4s. So the F4s have all collectively, including the US one, gone up by 0.3 BR. Now, I'm not really surprised by this. The F series of aircraft, as you can find here, the F4 and the F4 Trop, they are both incredibly good. The only difference between them and the American one, which, let's see, is here. The American one does not get either secondary armaments, or it doesn't get itself the extended gun pods. So, with that said, if you look at the F4 here, it gets secondary armaments of cannons in the gun pods, and then also some bombs. So that's the main difference between them. I think this does make a decent bit of difference, not in air realistic, but in ground realistic. It would be, with the American BF-109 F4, if we were talking about a ground realistic setting, I would actually want it to be at 3.7, but in air realistic, where A lot of people nowadays actually tell you not to bring gun pods or, obviously not to bring bombs on BF-109. So in that context, it should be the same BR. It would be definitely another thing to advocate for. But for me personally, there's a lot of vehicles in this game which aren't very useful in air realistic, but they are really good, or at least serviceable in tank realistic. So for me, I still advocate for that system, different BRs for planes, whether you're talking about air or whether you're talking about ground. So yeah, hopefully at some point that will be, if since the BRs are, tied together now, having all of them at 4.0 makes some sense. The BF-109 F4s, my stats, let's see. I'm not sure what my stats are at with the Fs, 42 and 16, and the F4 Trop 52 and 22. So pretty good. The G2 obviously being the king. The reason why I have a lot of kills in my G2 is because I used it a lot to do events back in the day, and also because it had so many skins. You have to grind out the skins. So that's why I enjoyed flying it. But overall, the F4s are magical aircraft. What you find with them is a lot of maneuverability. You find with them, if you need the extra firepower, you can get the extra firepower. Oh, also this had a lot of skins as well, so that's lovely. But you have the extra firepower in the form of the gun pods. If you only have one person left on the enemy team, you can go back, you can get a bomb. There's a lot of versatility with them. And also on top of all of this, they have ridiculous climb rates and really good war emergency power. And the F4 Trop is even better at managing that when it comes to engine temperatures. The only thing you have to worry about the BF-109s is overcooking your engines or running out of fuel. And some people will do that, but the majority of the time, as long as you're just looking at the top left of your screen every so often, you'll be all good. Not surprised to see these go up once again. They have fantastic win rates, they are fantastic aircraft, and it's because of that balance between energy fighting and also maneuverability. As you go along, with the BF-109s, you kind of lose that a little bit, especially with the later Gs, but it's still there. That maneuverability is still there, but you start getting outdone in the energy by some of the allied aircraft, such as the Griffin Spits. The next change, if we go down to here, is the Ac-9T. And this is kind of an interesting one for me. Whenever I've used the Ac-9T in air realistic, I've never really had a bad time with it, but I've never felt very impactful. And the reason for this is because it's not a very impactful machine. Like in air realistic, maybe 1 or 2 kills, with it, and then kind of go back to base. The Ac-9T here, 12, 15, and then 14 ground. Not very good. To be quite honest, pretty bad. And I suppose if I played it now, I could make it a little bit better. But the question for the Ac-9T is how good is it in ground realistic because of that, T cannon. The 37mm with its armored target, 60mm of pen. It's a great gun to use in a lot of event vehicles. Why is that like that? Using events to be able to pop a lot of tanks and stuff like that. And because of this, running it in a lineup at 4.3 has always kind of been what I've done. Since it's a rank 3 aircraft, it always counted for events, and you can run it at 4.3 with the T-3457, KV-1 ZIS-5, and also, there's ZIS-43 if you feel like it, or the KV-2, both KV-2s, but now, it's lower BR, so you can actually run it with a 4.0 lineup. You know what doesn't really exist? A 4.0 lineup. I mean, you have the T-34E STZ, the T-34E if you have it, the one with the extra spaced armor on it, as you can see here, but the 4.0 lineup is not strong for the Soviets. The 4.3 lineup is insanely good. With the 2 KVs, if you want to take them, T-3457, ASU-57, just a lot of big tanks there, which are very good at what they do. So to see it get dropped in BR, in the ground realistic sense, it doesn't really make a difference. So for air realistic, for me, what I mean is in ground realistic, you still take this at 4.3. Right, if you're running a 4.3 lineup, you got no better options. If you want a meme, you take the PE8, but you still take this. A 4.0 in ground, it's not a strong lineup, but at least you can take it, so, a little bit better. But the big effect for this machine now will be in air realistic, where it will go against slightly better planes for it. And what I mean is the matchup will be better. But overall, if you're using this thing, it should be in a ground realistic sense. And if you need to use it in air realistic, just go hunt attackers and bombers and annihilate them. And if you're set up against fighters, well, now a lot of the BF-109s, the F-series, the F-4s are at 4.0. You're not going to be able to beat them unless you get the jump on them or they're brain dead. And that's, my modus operandi when it comes to a lot of these matchups is if you're hoping your enemy is brain dead, then you have issues. So don't get into that conflict. The next one on the list is the LA-5FN Germany, and this is to bring it in line with the LA-5FN that the Soviets have, so that just makes sense. I mean, that obviously, if they are exactly the same vehicle, exactly the same flight model, they should have the same BR. The next one, when it comes to air realistic, they've actually reverted the A6M5 changes, so the A6M5 and A6M5 Otsu are no longer going up in BR. What I talked about in the video was I was kind of surprised by this change, and when it comes to the A6M5s, the Americans have all the tools to beat them. Basically, around this BR with Mustangs and P-47s, which is, the reason why I talk about America a lot when it comes to Japan is because Japan have two people they generally fight. You have the Soviets, right? And then you have America. Now, the Soviets around 4.7 are absolutely ass. You have the I-185, you have the Yaks, which are lower BR than it, then you have the Yak-9U, which is pretty good, Yak-9UT, which is pretty good, but their engines decide a lot of the time just to melt, so all you have to do is wait a little bit. The Yak-9P is pretty good, once again, same issue. The engine likes to melt, so all you have to do is just wait them out. Like, the matchups that the A6M5s get is really good, but the enemy teams do, especially the Americans, they have a massive way of dealing with them. Just drag them up and annihilate them. So, watching them getting lowered in BR again, it doesn't really make that much of a difference because they'll still be playing against a lot of the 4.3, 4.7s, that they used to, but it means that they can't get up tiered into the 5.7s, such as the Griffin Spitz or, the 6.0s, which would start maiming them. The next one is the Seafire FR47. Now, is this the premium one? I'll just make sure on this. So I might be... Oh no, it's this one. Never mind. So the Seafire FR47. I haven't really played this a lot, so just take, what I say with a pinch of salt. I don't think I've played this at all, actually. Never mind, I played it a little bit. Obviously with the 20mm cannons, it's at 5.3, that's kind of nice. It also has a low-powered Griffin engine, but it's still good. It's got the hydroprop, is it the hydro... I'm blanking out on this machine so bad. But you know what I mean. The turboprop. There we go. Not the hydroprop. What am I on about? And with it, at 5.3, you still can do well. The issue with some of the lower tier Griffin Spitfires, like the Seafire FR47, is they can feel incredibly heavy, especially if you're not fully upgraded. So when it comes to the 6.3, 6.7, machines that the Spitfires have, which have the Griffins, I'm talking about basically these two here, they feel very nice, and they also don't have really heavy wings because they don't have 4 20mm. 2 20mm Hispanos will or are completely fine when it comes to dealing with stuff. The Seafire is exactly the same way, with the 220s, but it looks like the FR47, by statistics, it has been decided that it is going to go down to 5.3. So for me personally, I'm actually going to give this a go. I am a massive fan of the Sea Fury, massive fan of the Tempest Mark V and the F Mark 17, so I'm kind of surprised that I haven't fully aced this out, and I actually can't even remember playing it, so I apologize for that one. Let's just move on. The next one is a bunch of jet changes, and these changes, for me, a lot of them are very positive. So first of all, the MiG-9s. Now, it's been known for a long time that the MiG-9s are incredibly good at 7 OBR. The reason for this is because they're highly maneuverable, they have a lot of speed behind them, and generally when you are at 7.0, you are facing a lot of jets which can't go insanely fast like the 9.0s, but you can still run into some 8-0s when they're not getting up-tiered into 9-0s, and you have the maneuverability to be able to dodge the shots and also be able to chase them down sometimes. The MiG-9s in general are very, very good starter jets for a lot of people because they have some dodgy guns on them, which means that, and this may sound counterintuitive, but I'm very much a person where it's like throw you in at the deep end and see if you can swim out, and if you don't swim out, then GG kind of thing. But with the MiG-9s, you don't have the best guns when it comes to jet combat. You have limited ammo, so you get used to, short bursts and being able to hit targets when you're close to them. What the MiG-9 is very good at doing is getting close to enemy jets because it's maneuverable, and also it can cut speed very quickly, but it also has good straight line speed. So to see it go up in BR is not really a surprise. A lot of the time with the MiG-9, as you can see, I run it with my 7.7-8.0 lineup. I prefer it over stuff like the LA-15, LA-174 in ground realistic, and that's just because of the maneuverability that it gives me over the battlefield. It means going after a lot of like attackers or bombers. It's much easier to do in this thing than it is in something like an LA-15 or an LA-200, which is just a mess to 8.0. So overall, seeing it being up-tiered, I think it's good because, as I said many times in the past, I would love to just put a straight barrier between propellers and jets. So raising it in BR means that it keeps away from the jets which are at lower BR. Thank God. The MiG-9L performance is better than the MiG-9s. I've always found it odd that they are at the same BR, and it's a little bit weird that with them being at the same BR, the difference in performance. But the question is, is the performance big enough to make them different BRs? I have always said yes, because I always thought the MiG-9L should go to 7.3 if the MiG-9 stays at 7.0, but now they're both at 7.3, I think it's okay, because it means that they should get up to it a bit more. The Barougeon and the Urugeon, or the Orugeon, the MD-450Bs, these are two French aircraft that if we go here, you can see. Now, the reason why I stopped playing the French at top tiers is because I didn't really feel like it. As many of you may know, I'm not a jet pilot, so understand everything that I say about jets is going to be prop focused, and also my experiences with them playing top tier ground vehicles, and also, the odd occasion where I do play top tier air realistic. The Barougeon and the Orugeon, every time that I've seen them in battle, seen them talked about, also playing the Barougeon, I felt very much outclassed by a lot of the enemies that I face, and the main reason is, as you can see for the Barougeon and the Urugeon, is that they were at 8.0. Now, the 8.0 is a death trap for many planes, and the reason for this is because you get dragged up into 9.0, and getting dragged up into 9.0 is hell on earth if you're in something like a Barougeon. It's the reason why the LA-200, even though a lot of people were looking at the statistics before it came out and being like, oh god, this is going to take over the game, how is it at 8.0? Well, the reason why it's not at 9.0 is because it gets crucified by other 9.0s. Like, you compare the MiG-17 to the LA-200, annihilates it. Canada Air Sabre annihilates it. And it was the same issue with some of these 8.0 French jets. So seeing them getting lowered to 7.7 gives me hope that they will be used more. It actually makes me happy to see that these machines, which were being annihilated by the matchmaker, because, as I've talked about many times before, the human element of matchmaking, where people want to win, people want to play the best stuff, so everybody plays the Canada Air Sabre, or the American Sabres, or the Japanese Sabre if they have access to it. Yes, guess who are the people who are getting stomped underfoot? Stuff like the MD-450s, which is why nobody was playing them. So to see them getting dropped in BR makes me feel great. It means that 7.0 or around 7.0 BR should actually become a BR again, instead of it getting down-tiered into props and then 8.0 getting up-tiered into 9.0. What I would like is 7.0s and 8.0s to fight each other, and with these changes of bringing some 8.0s down and increasing some 7.0s, hopefully this will create this environment. The next set are the G.91 Pre-Series and the G.91 R1. Lord Jesus, they've answered our prayers, or at least my prayers. The G.91s are finally going up in BR. If you don't know about the G.91s, these two. Now, I actually refused to research the G.91 R1. And the reason was because my experience in the G.91 Pre-Series. Remember, both of these planes, if you look at this, used to be 8.0. The R1, by Thunderskill, on Thunderskill, has an 82% win rate. The Pre-Series has a 74% win rate. These were 8.0 since the Italians were released, and they have been dominating this whole time. The reason is because they don't have a downside. The downside that a lot of people were bringing up was the fact that they only have 4 12.7s, and you can't always get, a decent crit on an enemy with 4 12.7s. If you're a good jet player, that don't matter to you. The guns are high velocity, you're able to go after enemies pretty effectively, and mainly, with the 4 12.7s, it was good enough to maim an enemy, and then you could finish them off, because this thing has speed, has maneuverability, has good speed performance, has everything that you would want. It's also small. And one thing that a lot of people forget, like the MiG-9 also is something that benefits from this, and the Ak-17 and the Ak-15P as well. Having a small vehicle means it's harder to hit, and if that vehicle is incredibly maneuverable as well, you get the G91 with an 80% win rate. So thank God both of these got up-tiered. It basically means, they're normally fighting at 9.0 anyway, but it means, once again, with these getting up-tiered, the Pre-Series and the R1, that now we have more of a chance of 7.0 and 8.0 actually becoming BRs where people can fight each other instead of everything getting dragged up to 9.0. I don't know why it took so long for these to get up-tiered. I talked about these, I believe, like a week after launch, how they were going to be an issue. Even maybe on the dev server, I talked about how they may be an issue. So it is finally lovely to see that they have been up-tiered. The Vautours were in a similar position with them being at 8.0, and bang, they were changed very quickly. But for some reason, the G91 stayed where they are. Very happy, best change, 2018. F9, F2, F9, F8, and F9, F5, the Panthers and the Cougars of the world have been down-tiered. So the F9, F8, if you don't know about this plane, for me, it is the best looking aircraft in the game. Absolutely stonkingly beautiful aircraft. What you also may not know is that it's slow as all hell, loses too much speed in the turn, and also the guns, the NM3s, they don't have a very high muzzle velocity, so therefore doing head-ons isn't always the best. But the main issue with the Cougar that a lot of people have been talking about is the fact that with the way its flight model is, it is nowhere near as fast as it should be. The acceleration is just whack on the Cougar, and therefore being an 8 and 9.0 vehicle, it was useless because people would just use the Sabres. And this is a problem with having vehicles at a top BR which are very similar to each other. If you have them at the top BR, nobody is ever going to play the Cougar. Everybody is going to play the Sabre because it's slightly better than the Cougar, because human element of matchmaking, people want to win, especially at the top tiers when they've finished researching stuff. The F9 F5s and the F9 F2, now when they were at 9.0 as well, these things used to be... Oh yes, the F3D got moved down. I remember that, the F3D here. The F9F5 and the F9F2, also at 9.0, had the same fate because of the Sabres, the F86s, which were pretty much just better than them in every way when it came to the meta of War Thunder. They were more maneuverable, they weren't ordnance-focused. You've got to remember the F9Fs, the Panthers, and the Cougar, at least the Panthers, they were used not as just an out-and-out fighter, but also as kind of like a semi-ordnance carrier. So, are you going to pick an all-out fighter, which is designed, to fight other fighters, or are you going to pick something that's a bit of half and half? You're always going to pick the fighter, because at high tiers, fighters rule. Simple as Canadair Sabre, Hunter, G.91s, the F-86, F-40 for the Japanese. You know, these are all aircraft which dominate the meta. Maybe not the Hunter, MiG-17 probably more than the Hunter. The Hunter actually not a lot of people are playing, which is kind of weird, at least for me. But anyway, yeah, it's nice to see them get dropped in BR, and once again, maybe this means that between 7-0 and 8-0, we actually get matches which aren't completely all dragged into 9-0. They tried this with tanks, right? They tried to create a 9-0. They did this by adding the XM1, M60 Rise, then you had the Leopard A1A1, Leopard A1A1 L44, T55 AM, but that got put to 8.7 before the patch dropped. But they tried to make a 9-0 for ground vehicles, and you know what happened? All those 9-0s got dragged up. That is why we're seeing a lot of them get dropped to 8.7, so they can actually have a fighting chance. Hopefully we're seeing the same thing with jets. Hopefully this will work better than it did for ground. I have my hopes, and that's what I have to cling by. So that is all the BR changes, or the latest updates BR changes, which are now live in the game. I hope you all have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.